Robert gets home exhausted after another long day at work. The house, which used to be his safe haven, now feels cold and empty. He drops his keys on the entry table and immediately senses something's off. The silence is almost deafening. His heart races as he walks through the living room, noticing that the house seems untouched, like no one's been there all day. He heads to the kitchen hoping to find some sign of life, but all he sees is a white envelope on the table. His name is written on it in Grace's familiar handwriting. A chill runs down his spine as he picks it up. Hesitant, he sits in the nearest chair, feeling a tightness in his chest. With trembling hands, he opens the envelope and pulls out a sheet of paper, already knowing that what's inside won't be easy to read. Robert, the letter begins. I hope you can understand what I'm about to say. Over the past few months, I've been feeling lost and distant, and the truth is, I've fallen in love with someone else. Each word feels like a punch, leaving Robert stunned. He keeps reading, the pain growing with each line. Grace writes that she's met someone who makes her feel alive again, something she hasn't felt in a long time. She mentions that she tried to fight these feelings, but she can't keep living a lie. The ground seems to fall away beneath him. They've had their ups and downs like any couple, but Robert never imagined it would come to this. He grips the letter tightly, unable to process the betrayal. Grace goes on to say that she needs a fresh start and is asking for a divorce. She's already made all the arrangements, hired a lawyer, and wants everything handled quickly and smoothly. Robert feels his heart shatter into a million pieces. The image he had of his life, his marriage, everything they'd built together, crumbles before his eyes. He recalls the moments they shared, the early years of their marriage, the trips, the plans for the future, and now everything seems empty and meaningless. Grace ends the letter by saying that, despite everything, she hopes he finds happiness again, that he deserves someone who truly loves him, as she no longer can. Robert just sits there, the letter still in his hands, trying to understand how everything could end so suddenly. He looks to the side and sees a stack of papers, divorce documents. A wave of anger and pain washes over him. How could she be so cold, so calculated, to prepare all of this without even talking to him first, without giving him a chance to try to save the marriage? But he knows begging or trying to change her mind won't help. Grace has already made her decision. With a heavy heart, Robert signs the papers. The pen feels like it weighs a ton as he writes his name, formally ending a story he thought would last forever. When he's done, he gets up and goes to the living room, feeling empty and lost. All that's left now is him, alone in a house that suddenly feels too big and full of painful memories. From this moment on, Robert knows he'll have to start over, but he has no idea what that path will look like. He turns off the lights and heads upstairs to his bedroom, hoping that the darkness and silence will bring some comfort, even though he knows this will be the first of many sleepless nights. In the first few months after the divorce, Robert goes through life on autopilot. Mornings are especially hard. He wakes up in a room he used to share with Grace, which now seems to echo her absence. Getting out of bed is a daily struggle, and he often finds himself staring at the ceiling, thinking about how everything changed so drastically. He tries to stick to a routine, as if fulfilling daily obligations could somehow fill the emptiness he feels, but the pain is always there, insistent and throbbing. Work, which once was a source of pride and fulfillment, has become a burden. He arrives at the office, greets his coworkers with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, and spends the hours trying to focus on tasks. But his mind keeps drifting back to the same question. How did he not see that something was wrong? Emails pile up. Meetings seem endless, and Robert sometimes just pretends he's listening. His productivity plummets and his supervisors start to notice. There are concerned looks, colleagues asking if he's okay, but he doesn't have the energy to explain. He just nods, mutters that he's fine and keeps going, or at least he tries. The nights are even worse. The big silent house seems to haunt him with memories of what used to be. He sits on the couch, the TV on but his mind elsewhere, drowning in the quiet. Robert doesn't pay attention to what's playing on the TV. The loneliness is overwhelming. He avoids looking at his phone, afraid of seeing a message from Grace, or worse, no message at all. He misses even the small things like the sound of her laughter or the smell of the coffee she used to make every morning. One day, while coming home, Robert meets Mary, his neighbor, at the entrance of the building. He vaguely remembers that her husband had recently passed away, but they've never really talked. Her eyes, though calm, carry a weight that Robert immediately recognizes. She smiles a sad, understanding smile, and they exchange a few words. It's a brief moment, but something about that interaction touches him. For a second, he feels that he's not completely alone in his pain. The conversations with Mary become more frequent. At first, they're just quick greetings at the building entrance, but soon they turn into longer meetings. One day, Robert finds her sitting on the steps outside, holding a cup of tea. He joins her and they start talking about everyday things. The weather, work, even her dog, who always seemed eager for a walk. Slowly, their conversations deepen. Mary shares how hard it has been to adjust to life without her husband, how every corner of the house brings back memories that hurt. Robert relates, feeling that for the first time, someone truly understands his pain. In one of those talks, Mary mentions that she used to paint, but hasn't been able to pick up a brush since her husband died. She talks about how painting was a way to express herself, to find peace. Robert listens, admiring the strength and vulnerability with which she shares her feelings. He realizes that somehow, she's finding meaning amidst the chaos, and that gives him hope. One day, when he sees her leaving for a walk, Robert invites her for coffee. Mary hesitates but eventually agrees. They go to a small cafe near the building and spend hours talking. They laugh about past stories, share dreams and fears, and in that brief moment, Robert feels something he hasn't felt in months: lightness. It's not happiness exactly, but a relief, a small spark of something he thought he'd lost forever. When they part ways, Robert realizes that, for the first time since the divorce, he's not anxious to get back home. He walks back, feeling the cool night air, and an unexpected thought crosses his mind. Maybe, just maybe, life can be good again. He knows there's still a long way to go, but now with Mary by his side, he feels like he has a chance to rebuild. As the months pass, the friendship between Robert and Mary deepens naturally and genuinely. They start spending more time together, not because they need to escape their pain, but because they enjoy each other's company. The bond they've built through honest conversations and comfortable silences turns casual interactions into something much more meaningful. The laughter they share, the confidence they exchange, and even the quiet moments become essential parts of their routines. One Saturday afternoon, Mary invites Robert for a drive out of the city. They head to a quiet park, a place Mary used to visit with her late husband. As they walk along the trails surrounded by tall trees, she shares memories of the past, speaking fondly of how they used to have picnics there. Robert listens attentively, respecting the space she needs to revisit these memories, and feels that he's getting to know a new side of her, one that is both full of longing and gratitude. After a while, they sit on a bench overlooking a tranquil lake. Mary, a bit hesitant, takes a sketchbook out of her bag. She runs her fingers over the cover as if contemplating a secret, then hands it to Robert. Inside, he sees delicate drawings full of emotion, each telling a story, portraits of places she's visited, happy and sad moments, all captured with a sensitivity that leaves him speechless. He looks at her admiringly and asks why she stopped drawing. Mary sighs, looking at the horizon. She explains that after her husband's death, drawing became too painful. Each stroke on the paper reminded her that he wasn't there to share her creations anymore. Robert understands the weight of her words and respectfully hands back the sketchbook without pressuring her. But in that moment, he feels a deep desire to help her reconnect with her passion for art, just as she helped him reconnect with hope. Grace is trying to provoke him, looking for a reaction that could spoil the festive mood of the wedding. Mary, sensing the tension, gently touches Robert's arm, and that's all he needs to stay in control. He takes a deep breath and, with a firm but calm voice, responds to Grace. "Yes, Grace," Robert says. "I've found someone who supports me, understands me, and helped me rebuild when I was at rock bottom. Someone who deserves all my respect." He refuses to let Grace ruin this moment. "I appreciate everything we shared, but I'm happy now. And nothing you say will change that." Grace, realizing that her words aren't having the desired effect, decides to push further. She starts bringing up the past, mentioning moments from their marriage that she knows will hurt him. Mary, standing beside him, remains silent, but her presence is a pillar of strength for Robert. He listens to every word Grace says, but he doesn't let it get to him. In the end, he simply smiles and says, "Despite everything, I hold no grudges. My life took a different turn, and now I am at peace." Frustrated, Grace walks away but not before throwing one last jab. Something about Mary never understanding what they had. To everyone's surprise, it's Mary who responds, her voice calm but firm. "I don't need to understand what you had," she says, "because I know what Robert and I have now. A relationship based on respect and true love. And that's all that matters." Robert feels a wave of gratitude toward Mary for standing by him. He hugs her, feeling a mix of relief and happiness. The guests who witnessed the scene clap quietly. For a brief moment, Robert allows himself to look at Grace, who walks away with a bitter expression. He realizes that she's still stuck in the past, while he's managed to move on. The reception continues and Robert and Mary grow even closer. They dance together, smiling and laughing like two people who against all odds have found a second chance. Robert feels that this was the true test of their relationship, and they pass with flying colors. The night goes on and Lauren's wedding becomes a celebration not just of her union with her husband, but of all who, like Robert and Mary, have found a new beginning. Robert and Mary's wedding happens without further interruptions. After Grace's outburst, the couple exchanges sincere vows full of love and hope. The celebration continues with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Grace, humiliated and frustrated, leaves quietly. But her look before she leaves promises that she won't give up so easily. A few weeks after the wedding, Robert and Mary are at home, finally relaxing after the whirlwind of emotions from the big day. They share a quiet evening discussing plans for the future, when Robert's phone starts buzzing nonstop. He looks at the screen and his stomach churns, multiple messages and missed calls from Grace. He takes a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but her persistence starts to bother him. Mary, noticing the tension, asks, "What's going on?" Robert doesn't hold back. "Grace has been calling constantly, asking to meet. She says she needs to talk to me." Mary, always understanding, encourages him to resolve the situation once and for all. The next day, Robert agrees to meet Grace at a public cafe, a safe place where he feels he can keep things under control. When he arrives, she's already there, sitting at a table with an expression that's a mix of desperation and determination. As soon as he sits down, Grace starts talking quickly, almost without taking a breath. "Robert, I know things got out of hand at the wedding," she says. "I was desperate. I didn't mean to cause trouble. She pauses, her eyes locked on his. "I'm sorry. I want you back. I know I messed up, but we had so many years together. I still love you." Robert feels a wave of anger and exhaustion. He looks at Grace, a woman he loved deeply but who hurt him beyond repair. He takes a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. "Grace, you need to understand something." He begins, his voice calm but firm. "Everything we had is over. You destroyed that when you chose someone else. I suffered. I rebuilt myself. And now I have a life that you're not part of. You need to move on." "I know," Grace interrupts, tears streaming down her face. "I was an idiot. That man meant nothing. You were everything to me and I threw it all away. But please give me a chance to fix this." Robert looks at her, seeing sincerity in her eyes mixed with desperation, but he doesn't feel pity, only a deep weariness. He's no longer the man who begged for a sliver of her attention, who accepted scraps of affection. He's become someone stronger, someone who knows what he deserves. "No, Grace. I can't," he replies, his voice sharper than he intended. "What we had doesn't exist anymore. And honestly, I don't want it anymore. I don't want you anymore." Grace seems to crumble, but then her face twists with anger. "What happened to you?" she asks, her voice trembling but full of venom. "You were never like this. You were never a real man, always submissive, always weak. And now?" She laughs a dry, bitter laugh. "Now you want to be this man? Why? Because you're with her? Because Mary is worth that much." Robert feels his blood boil. He leans forward, staring at Grace with an intensity that makes her flinch slightly. "That's right, Grace. Mary is worth it. You were never worth defending because you never respected me. But Mary, she deserves every part of me. She made me see that I'm more than what you made me believe I was." Grace is speechless, her eyes wide as if she's been slapped. For the first time, she realizes she has truly lost Robert. There is no going back. He is a changed and resolute man. She tries to speak, but the words die on her lips. Robert stands up, grabs his coat, and gets ready to leave. Before he goes, he looks at Grace one last time, without anger, but with sad acceptance. I hope you find peace one day, Grace. But that peace isn't with me. And it never will be again. With that, he turns and walks away, leaving Grace alone, sinking in the consequences of her own choices. When Robert gets home, Mary is waiting for him with a warm smile. He hugs her, feeling a huge weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he feels like he's closed a chapter and can finally move forward without any shadow from the past. Looking at Mary, he knows he made the right choice, that he's exactly where he's meant to be. I was an idiot, Grace says, her voice breaking. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. I was so stupid. Please, Robert, please. I want another chance. I promise I'll do better. You were everything to me. Robert feels a sharp pain in his chest but shakes his head, steadying his emotions. Grace, he says, his tone resolute, you had your chance, and you made your choice. I can't go back. I won't go back to that. It hurt too much and I've moved on. He looks her in the eyes, searching for any sign of the woman he once loved. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not going to keep living in the past either. Grace's face crumples and she takes a shaky breath, trying to compose herself. But we were good together, Robert. We had so many good moments. Why can't we find that again? He leans back in his chair, his voice calm yet firm. We had good moments, yes. But the bad ones became too much. I gave you everything and you chose someone else. I can't ignore that. What you're asking for, it's not fair to me anymore. I'm not that person anymore. There's a long silence as Grace processes his words, the reality of the situation sinking in. Finally, she looks up at him with a defeated look in her eyes. I don't know what to do now. Robert sighs, feeling a wave of empathy mixed with finality. What you need to do is let go, Grace. You can't keep holding on to something that's already gone. I've moved forward, and it's time for you to do the same. Grace's tears fall freely now, but Robert doesn't soften. He knows this is the hardest part. Letting her see him not as the man who would always come back, but as someone who has healed, someone who has found a better path. I hope you find happiness, Robert says softly, his voice steady. But it won't be with me. The words hang between them, and for a moment, the weight of everything seems to settle in the air. Grace nods slowly, her gaze drifting to the table. Robert stands up, ready to leave, but before he walks away he adds, take care of yourself, Grace. Goodbye. He turns and walks away, feeling the weight of the finality of it all. As he steps out of the cafe, he breathes deeply, letting go of the last remnants of that chapter. He knows it's over. It has to be. Later, when he gets home, Mary is there waiting for him. She can see the strain on his face, the weight of what he's just done. Without a word, she walks over, wraps her arms around him, and holds him tightly. Robert exhales deeply, feeling the comfort of her presence wash over him. I'm proud of you, she whispers. You did the right thing. He nods, his arms tightening around her. I'm just tired of being dragged back into that pain. I'm ready to move forward. With you. Mary smiles, kissing him softly on the cheek. We'll do it together. And in that moment, Robert feels the weight of the past lift just a little bit more. He's done with looking back. It's time to look ahead, to build something new with the person who's been there for him through everything. He knows now that the future is full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long while, he's not afraid to embrace it. Grace's voice trembles as she pleads. But I can't. I was an idiot. That man meant nothing. You were everything to me, and I threw it all away. Please, Robert, give me a chance to fix this. Robert looks at her, and for the first time in a long while, he doesn't feel any pity. There's no sorrow or doubt in him anymore, only a deep weariness. The man who once begged for her attention, the one who accepted the crumbs she threw his way, is gone. He has evolved into someone stronger, someone who knows his worth. The words come out firm, without hesitation. No, Grace, he replies, his voice sharper than he'd intended. I can't. What we had doesn't exist anymore. And honestly, I don't want it anymore. I don't want you anymore. Grace seems to crumble under the weight of his words. But then her face twists with anger, and her voice shakes with venom. What happened to you? she spits, eyes burning with resentment. You were never like this. You were never a real man, always submissive, always weak. And now you laugh. Now you want to be this man? Why? Because you're with her? Because Mary is worth that much. Robert feels his blood boil. He leans in, his voice cold but intense as he stares her down. He doesn't flinch, doesn't back down. That's right, Grace. Mary is worth it. You were never worth defending because you never respected me. His words come out forceful, each one like a punch. But Mary, she deserves every part of me. She made me see that I'm more than what you made me believe I was. Grace's face goes pale. The words hit her like a slap, and for the first time she truly understands. She has lost him. There is no going back. The man standing before her is resolute, unshaken. Robert sees the shock in her eyes. She doesn't know what to say anymore because for the first time, the man she thought she could control is gone. She tries to speak, but the words falter, die on her lips. Robert stands, grabs his coat, and without another word, prepares to leave. Before he goes, he looks at her one last time. Not with anger, but with a sad, quiet acceptance. I hope you find peace one day, Grace, he says. But that peace isn't with me. And it never will be again. With that, he turns and walks away, leaving Grace behind. Alone, she's left to confront the full weight of the choices she's made. When Robert arrives home, Mary is waiting for him, her warm smile a gentle balm for the tension that's been gnawing at him all day. He walks into her arms, feeling the weight of everything he's just left behind. The past, the heartache, the struggle. It all begins to feel like a distant memory. For the first time in a long while, he feels lighter, like he's finally closed a chapter of his life. He hugs Mary tightly, breathing in the comfort of her presence. Looking at her, he knows without a doubt that he made the right choice. He is exactly where he's meant to be.